We want to introduce our VIP guest today, Dr. Sharon Jones. I've known Sharon for quite a while. She's been a leader in our community, just really a big advocate for STEM and education. And I guess you're going on 20 plus years. We don't want to date ourselves, Sharon, but you've been doing this a long time. And if you don't mind, just kind of share with us a little bit about your background. You've obviously started quite a few organizations to support STEM, and let's just kick things off with
Sure.
your intro.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, so much for having me. As you mentioned, my background is centered around education and STEM education and computer science. I love everything about the world of technology and how it innovates. We're constantly learning and changing and doing, and there's just so much power around that. And watching our industry in particular grow, from just 10 years ago is pretty powerful. But my work centers, as you mentioned, around computer science and education. So I have a nonprofit organization called Dottie Rose Foundation that's named in honor of my grandmother. And we are looking to close the gender gap for women in the tech field. And we have done so by serving over 4,500 girls over the past 8 years. And we have summer camps and workshops and in school programming, all centered around what I consider being committed and consistent, showcasing opportunities for young ladies to see themselves in different scenarios where technology is a part of what you do and really connecting that to real life. And then I also have a consulting business where I work to support, I like to say the Dottie Rose Foundation is for the little people, and the consulting business, I work with all the big people and supporting the integration of computer science and STEM into curriculum. And that spans from K-12 all the way through college and workforce development. And that's just showcasing, in particular, you all know this, I mean, at the rapid pace at which we're utilizing, how do we integrate that so that people can use it efficiently?
I love that. So, what called you to this work, and what keeps you going in it?
Oh, that's a great question. So, really, I tripped into this, and I say that often. When I was in high school, I was DJ Sharky Sharon.
What? Fun facts. I love
We
that.
might need we might need to see some pictures of that. I have a
Yes.
picture in my head. I don't know if it's gonna match the real one, but
So, yeah, I went off to school thinking I was going to be a DJ, and I interned at a radio station. And at that time, which again we'll date ourselves, but was in the late 90s, early 2000s, really late 90s, we'll just put it there, 1900s. It was already automated. There was already an algorithm, a computer-based program that was utilizing when songs we played and how we played. So there wasn't a lot of conversation, in particular on the FM side. AM's a little bit different, but it was much harder then to get into a talk radio position. I come from a long line of educators, and I kept being like, nah, not going to be a teacher. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do what everyone else has done. And then I found myself going back to it over and over again. I was tutoring, I was being a tour guide. I'm like, "Ooh, can I help y'all with that?" And I was like, "Good gravy, Sharon." So I call that the boomerang. When I often tell that to my girls, like, or whoever I'm working with, like, where do you find yourself going back to over and over again? So long story short, went to East Carolina and I did a master's in education in business and information technology. And I say this because I had never programmed before in my life until I went to my master's program. And you guys, I learned Visual Basic .NET, which is an object-oriented language that was utilized in the banking industry. And I can remember to this day when I learned how to turn the light bulb on and off using code, I lost my mind. "Oh my god, this is so amazing." And I realized at that moment that figuring out how to make the computer do something I wanted it to do was really powerful. And that's kinda how I got started. I just sort of began to figure out, well, how can I use this to make something cool, And because I'd taken that class, that's what ended up opening the door for me to start teaching, because I was the only teacher in North Carolina teaching VB.NET, and then it just kind of spun from there. And so that's what keeps me going, the light bulb moment when I see the kids get so excited about things.
yeah. Are you able to reflect a little bit on, how different things may have been with that early exposure to what you saw as in your master's program, and now you're kind of working through that early reach into the, we keep getting younger and younger, right? As to So have you had a chance to kind of reflect back on how that may have changed things for you?
If I had had access, yes, I think it would have been a completely different direction. My parents were very, very supportive in whatever I wanted to do. My mom has always said, "You just have to train yourself to do something." So give yourself the opportunity to have a skill. You need to have a skill, and then that can direct you wherever you need to be. And I've always, support. But what I will tell you, I don't know that I would change my story about what exposure I had, but what I would change is the encouragement that came from the people around me. I felt like as a woman or as a girl, I was often put into a box that I was to do this. I was to do English. And I'm not a great writer. Think that I don't know who developed and decided that we could utilize things like ChatGPT and all the AI tools to help us write, but I'm so grateful for them. I'm so grateful for templates. And because I would be the one would have a white piece of paper and just like be staring at it. But mathematically, I was actually very good. I struggled a bit in school, pre-calculus, not my jam, but statistics and accounting, bring it, people, bring it on. But I had to find the right fit. So to answer your question more, what I would say is exposure and building confidence is what's the difference maker. I don't know what my journey may have been different if I had had a better encouragement around realizing that literacy in English is not really, I shouldn't have been an AP English. You have opportunities in many states to do what we call a career and college promise, where you're able to take college level classes in high school. And that can deter in lots of different ways. You may want to take an accounting class in high school, which may not be offered to you, but you could do it through the local college. Sometimes what happens with school systems is you have a limited option, like you do geometry, pre-algebra, algebra, or you can do pre-calculus, calculus, those kinds of things. And for me, those weren't necessarily the perfect fit. I really liked the practical math of statistics and accounting. And I really like geometry a lot too, and figuring out spaces and distances and that kind of thing. So like those are things that were interested to me.
And sometimes you were placed in those pathways, or it was very cookie cutter. So how have we changed and how we evolved to kind of give more of a customized path and access to what is actually the right fit for me versus I just want to go down the math pathway?
Huh. So I don't know that there's a one size fits all to answer that question. What I would say is ask lots of questions. So often I will start, and I say this to anybody: what do you love to do the most? What do you get lost in? Like if you could do anything and you're working on it, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, holy moly, it's been 2 hours. That could be drawing, it could be video games, it could be reading, it could be anything.
I love what you said about your mother's advice. Just learn something. Was she saying like learn a skill or go get a college degree? Similar, my grandfather said something very similar to me. And he was a little bit, I mean, he's from World War II. He was a really straight shooter, but he was just like, hey, listen, you're not always going to have your looks. Make sure go learn something. No one can take away anything that you learn. It's the one thing nobody takes away. I took that as a way of like education. So I personally just kind of pushed myself into that because it's the one thing that no one can take away from me. And I can, it'll always be a tool that I can pull out of my toolbox and use and constantly grow and improve. And so I really loved that advice.
Yeah, I mean, what she was saying was, I want you, exactly what you said, Valerie. She wants you to have a skill. How you go about doing that has to be on your own path. It may not be that you go off to college. It may be that there is a trade school or community college, or maybe you do community college and then you find your path. She wanted to make sure that I did not feel like I had to make one of those choices of teacher, nurse, or secretary, which was much of what really was offered to her, and to find my own path. And so I ended up wanting to go off to school after I graduated. But I will be honest with you, if I look back on that, and I'm even encouraging my own children now, I don't know that I was really ready to step into a 4-year college at the age of 18. I mean, I had just turned 18. I struggled my freshman year a lot. And so that's one thing about my parent, and this will be the other thing that I'm going to tell you in terms of what my mom said. While education can be seen as a 4-year institution, the thing that my mama Dottie, instilled in me is that you're always learning something. I cannot tell you all how many workshops I went to with my mama D to learn how to create a flower arrangement within an oasis, figuring out how much water went in that oasis so that it facilitated the growth of the flowers. What type of flower would I put in there? What kind of year was it that we were going to put these flowers in there? So I think in terms of training yourself to do something, part of that means yes, maybe fine. I think you do need to have some type of guidance, but never forgetting that you should always be continuing to learn.
I think that's a really great point because I was at a high school and they were having a career day and I was invited to come out and talk about my career and
Mhm.
share with all the high school students the different types of jobs within the space of data centers and construction and so forth. I asked them all, there was about 180 students, just to give everybody a perspective on this. I asked everybody, how many of you know what you want to do when you graduate? Less than 1% of them raised their hand. And I was not expecting that. I don't know why I thought it would be a much bigger number. And so then that was when I said to them, well, I'm not sure why, or maybe you kind of have an idea and you just haven't settled on it, or why I don't see more hands. But let me tell you about all the jobs in the trades. Let me tell you about all the jobs
Yeah.
in data centers. Let me tell you about all of the 2-year hands-on paid programs that are alternatives to college before you get into college, flounder around, and really end up just partying the whole time and
Mhm.
wasting your time and flunking out. Go get your hands dirty. Go try some different things out. Go intern at 3, 4 different places. And at the same time, oh, by the way, you're also learning the type of people you like to work with. You're also learning the type of culture you want to work in with. You also learn what you don't like. And you're kind of trying these companies out, and it's really getting you closer to what you want to do before you go spend all of this time, money in a college program. It helps you kind of dial in your direction. And I really think that should be first steps before anybody goes and starts investing a lot of time. Most people justify it, well, the first few years is just general studies anyway, and you've got time to figure it out. True, but what if you're just not fit for the college in general? Some people just don't want to sit in a room and be lectured at. They're just more hands-on type of people. And so that was my experience. So it just really aligns with what you were saying. But I do want to segue back to something you were saying around AI.
Mhm.
And no doubt that's just such a huge conversation today. And you were talking about, and I wrote a note here, you were talking about AI and how that was your light bulb moment, and how that light bulb moment of being able to utilize AI to turn on and off was that visualization.net, just being able to use all of that. I think that's just such an empowering thing. And that really kind of pivoted you toward where you were today. That was kind of that launching point for you, was what I heard you say. And so my question is why do you think AI literacy needs to start before high school? And then what happens if it doesn't?
Oh gosh, that's a deep question. Why are
I
you're gonna go
I know,
down
but
that.
I really want to dig into,
Yeah.
I
No.
start to think about how much AI isn't getting into the schools and how much we're
Yes,
not getting that early exposure
correct.
around it. And so it just connecting what we were just talking about and going back to that point and saying, okay, if we're not getting it in the schools and we're not getting the exposure, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's not great. I've been having this conversation a lot because people ask me regularly. And so, one thing I will say, and this is something about our education system, good, bad, or in between, is what it is. We're a little slow, and the school system gets nervous, and there's all kinds of things around it. But okay, so artificial intelligence, when should it start? We should be having conversations with young people as early as kindergarten, right? That's really no different than having conversations around what is digital literacy and what's happening when you're using this thing called a computer and understanding what it means. One of the pieces that has been very frustrating for me as a technologist, as a computer scientist, is that the world of technology, while AI has been fast and it has been furious over the past few years, it's not something new. We have been working with machine learning and artificial intelligence since the 50s. It's also been a part of, if people can remember when the internet came out and we all had a mental freak out about Netscape and Inter Explorer and all the things that were happening. And then when Google came out, it was like, nobody should copy from the Googs. And then you copy and paste into your, like this is not something that's new. We've been doing this for a minute. So the part with artificial intelligence that we have to be so very clear with our students and with individuals is that artificial intelligence is still like the word it is, artificial intelligence. It's only as good as what we're putting into the computer. It is still a machine. It is still being fed information. That information is built on back-end models, and those models can come from a variety of different places, some biased, some, missing significant pieces. So the importance is to be able to talk to young people and give them a framework. We can't exclude it because it's a part of what we're doing. It's a part of our life. I mentioned it earlier, part of everyday, we're doing an everyday life. What we need to give the kids a perspective around is that this is what it is. Here are all the facts. Use it with authenticity and with integrity. And remember, it's a machine. So I call it the power of the blend. Love what you can type in and what can come back to you, but then take that and make it your own. So you still have to have your human brain and your computer brain. The two of them, when they come together, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah,
And
I totally agree with that. I mean, it's most people are concerned about, and actually, MIT did a study on this where they did a study talking about was AI better than the human, and so they did the study, and then they said, well, let's just see if the combination of the two, and the combination of the two is outperformed the independent AI and the human. And so what happens is you have the folks, and this is, one of our last episodes, they say that, that Fiber Dan predicted that AI was going to take his manager's job. And I just think that was really interesting because I completely agree. It's about the fact that we can take a lot of data, which is what the AI, right, the machine learning, the information you're putting in there, AI can then take all of that data and spit out information faster than a human can. But the human is the one that can look over that data and those results and really understand what's an outlier or what's wrong or what's
what's the
false or
story?
what looks
What is
wrong.
it
Right,
telling us?
exactly. It can
What's the
really
nuances?
exactly. So it's taking the experts who are used to doing and creating these, what would have taken us a much longer to get to that point, used to seeing the reports, used to seeing the information. So when it pops out on the other end, that same person can quickly say, oh yeah, no, this is off. That, and let me go and adjust the data that's getting implemented into the machine that's feeding out this false outlier, right? Because at the end of the day, and so many companies who just start implementing AI and they don't understand how it works on the ins and outs of it, they'll implement it, but they won't organize the data for consistency, and therefore the data goes in not clean and comes out with false senses of security around the reports that you're putting out. And so there's so much tied up into that. Yeah.
I agree. There was one of my favorite quotes is he's a sculptor and an economist. I'm not saying that right. His name is Leo Chern. And he says, and I use this quote a lot, but the computer is incredibly fast, accurate, and stupid. Man is incredibly slow, inaccurate, and brilliant. The marriage of the two is a force beyond calculation.
And we
And
call that the human loop. So anytime we talk about
yes,
AI, it's the human loop.
yep.
Yeah. And I would say even just educating students on, yes, how AI can support them and kind of elevate their talents, elevate their minds, and all of those things. And then in the classroom, obviously, the teacher still needs to be the decision maker, right? So as we get back to that whole inserting AI into the classroom, just having that check and balances, right? So
100%. We still want, here's the thing, we still want this. We still want to have conversation. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. I am able to see each of you and have this wonderful conversation with you all, but we're all in three different places. But we're able to use technology, the video component of technology to make this happen. I mean, that is incredible. That power is magnificent. And so you have to think about, well, how would you use this power for good? How can you use this platform to create like what we're doing right now and having conversations? And the truth is that we've always had technology as a part of what we're doing. Like we were talking about inputting data. Think about that there were they were transcribing information. I have my pencil now in my hand, but writing down data, or there were people typing in data for long periods of time. And then over the years, that has changed into having more automation. So when people start freaking out about losing their jobs, it's not about losing their jobs, it's about rethinking what their job is going to look like. And some of the things that were more, that are a little more tedious can be automated, and you don't, and that's a good thing. We don't want to stay back. I mean, we want to progress.
well, that was the other part of this is, in our industry, I'm focused on mission critical in the data center industry, and we welcome the younger talent because they're helping us look at things in a different way that we've been doing things the same way for so long. And obviously the majority of who's working in these data centers are older, right? But when we bring in the young talent, they give us a different, newer perspective. And I think it's the same thing with AI. And I would even use this as a tool with the students to say, hey, what can we do with AI to actually speed up and actually empower you to bring these changes and with innovative technology, and how can we advance technology in a way, and it almost like gives them empowerment to accomplish some of the things that they're already thinking in the classrooms in their brains, right?
I think it allows you to actually be more creative,
Mhm.
because some of the technology has taken away some of the minuscule things that you had to do, and you can think bigger. And or for me, you asked earlier, Valerie, about how or why I keep doing this. And I will be very honest with you. The thing that I think keeps me going is that I honestly believed in my heart that I would be a high school teacher in a classroom. I love it. I love everything about teaching. I mean, there is just nothing better than watching the light bulbs go off and the kids, and there's just nothing better, right? I love everything about it. And it never occurred to me that I would be an entrepreneur with two businesses and the journey that I've taken. But you know why I am? Because of technology. Because I started to figure out, I mean, back in the day with MySpace, and then before cloud computing, I'm like, all right, so how many hard drives do I need in order to save this video? Because I remember this was the years ago, like where they used to do like the flip classroom, and I'm doing quotation marks because whatevs. And you would record yourself teaching, and then the kids could watch that whenever. And then when they came into the classroom, we'd be solving problems. Well, I thought that was magnificent, because teaching programming to high school students is like watching paint dry. It is, I mean, unless you're like, and we're gonna go down the loop, and I mean, like, it's just like, come on. Who wants to learn about a conditional statement? If I do this, then this is a variable var and dim. It's boring, right? So
Yeah.
you can put it in a video where you're like, all right, like short little snippets. Then they come in and then we work on it. They're like, oh, well, that one's so bad. I'm like, right, winning. So to me, that's how like that progression of technology and be able to use it to teach and integrate and understand that like it's not so scary. It's about how do I use it and how do we continue to use it to progress?
I completely agree. I think I get the question every other day. How do you do it all? Do you sleep? And you use your resources, you use your tools, you surround yourself with the right team, of course, but technology is a big piece of that. Automations are a big piece of that. And thank you, AI. So yeah, I think that that's a big point that you bring up. And I also think that similar to how today we have this big trace gap. I think that if we're hiding AI from our younger generation and lacking that exposure, I think we end up in a place where we have a bunch of students that we don't who we're trying to recruit into these new jobs that are going to no doubt rise up, right? And we're going to have the same problem that we have today with the trades or even operating a data center because we kept it so secret. We didn't talk about it. And these weren't, options we were introducing. And so I do think that, like you said, it starts at the kindergarten. I think we have to plant the seeds. I think we have to continue to water the seeds. And I think by the time they get to high school, it's not a new concept. In fact, the seed's been watered for so long. I have 80% of the students already knowing what they want to do when they graduate.
Agree.
I wanted to pivot a little bit, on the benefits of AI helps us solve some of the other challenges that we're facing like the unconscious bias and bridging the digital divide. I mean, we're doing so many things. I mean, you're familiar with E2D out of Charlotte, where, they're trying to just get laptops into the hands of underserved communities. So I think AI we've talked about this with human resources, with HR, as we're actually recruiting and staffing for these data centers. If AI, you're inserting that AI tool, they can read resumes and say, hey, don't tell me if this is a man or a woman, right? And then it just kind of helps kind of overcome some of that. So maybe let's just pivot a little bit about some of the benefits and how you kind of see AI helping us solve some of those challenges.
I have great hopes for AI. And you mentioned E2D, which is one of my favorite organizations. We partner with them regularly to provide laptops and whatnot for our students. But one of the things that I think AI provides is, let me say this, kind of back it up so you can kind of where I'm going to go with this. When I was working on my doctorate, one of the things that stuck with me the most was when I was doing my research, there was a gentleman named Dr. Fred Davis, and he was popular in the 80s. And he did something called the Technology Acceptance Model, the TAM, TAM. And there's 7 questions on either side. And it's perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness. And if you go through and you check those things off, if both of those check off as positive, you will adopt and you will integrate. And I have used that as like a fundamental piece for me, like in everything I do, right? So the way I see artificial intelligence and the reason why it's exploded is because it meets the same 2 criteria. ChatGPT, we are seeing the rise of generative AI because ChatGPT met those 2 things. It was useful and it was easy to use. And the accessibility of it. So we're talking about E2D and having access to a computer. And I still think we need that. We need to have a large device where we can do things. But the reason why AI, and I have great hopes for it, is we can use it anywhere. We have such ease of accessibility. That is what I believe is going to be the transformational for us. And where my prayers are, we have a crisis in K-12 education right now with finding educators that want to do the job. And so my hope is that we could utilize AI to help facilitate learning in small chunks. Remember I told you it's the power of the blend. I do not believe AI, I'm gonna say this, people don't be getting mad at me. I do not think AI should teach all children. I think it is a part of the learning.
Yes. Yes, when you have half your class on, what is it, IEPs?
Yes.
Is that what they still call it? Yeah. If AI could actually take my student and their learning disabilities or their special needs and special requirements and create and do some quick test on how they learn and then create a program of how to teach them,
Yes.
that is going to help, right? I would even think maybe even the teacher to student
Powerful.
ratios. Yes.
Well, and you think about it, so there's 2 parts to it. One, I'm a high believer in like small groups and stations. So one of the things I did a lot, and I still do that now, I believe in the movement because to your point, Valerie said earlier about sitting and people lecturing, no one learns. If you're doing the talking, you're doing the learning. So in order to make that change, move kids. Like if the 3 of us are in a classroom, they would move, like we would each have a small group and I'd move them, around and we each be doing something different. And then there could be a part where we would have some AI, artificial intelligence happening. The other piece to that is we are struggling to find math and science teachers and those that will teach things around computer science or physics. What I would love to say is, like, let's say, Mara, you are an expert in seventh grade science, and I don't have a seventh grade science teacher at two other classes in my
Mhm.
district. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could take you, you're going to do your lesson, and then we could amplify that through using a variety of softwares? Maybe it's a chat bot, maybe it's an interactive chat feature, maybe, of course, it can be through video, maybe it's through hologram. I don't know what it is, but
Mhm. But to take the content and do a little something to it tailored to another class, another level of learning or whatever. That's, yeah.
yes, but not take away the fact that there wouldn't be someone else around this. I just think thinking about how we do teaching differently is what I'm hopeful for, that AI will help bring to the forefront. And also, to your point of what you said, doing some personalized learning for students as they are moving through content.
I think that would be just a beautiful thing because to Mara's point, I mean, she's right. I mean, the IEP is significant and it takes even more time and more people to support those special needs and those special types of training and all the accommodations that you have to do, which are a variety. If you have a half a dozen of them in your classroom,
Mhm.
you're already strained. The class is already at capacity.
Yep.
So now everyone's being impacted even more so than they already were, and only because we can't seem to find, we keep wanting to stick everybody in the box, and if they don't stick in this box, then you need an IEP. Well, there's got to be a better way. There's just got to be
Listen,
a better way.
I think we all need IEPs. And by the way, IEP is individual education plan. I think that the truth of the matter is none of us learn in the same manner, period.
Mhm.
We just don't.
Absolutely.
Like, that's just not even, it's not even a thing. Now, you can see from science that we tend to learn, we like to learn visually first. We see first, then we hear. And then trying to do both of them together is, multitasking is not a real thing. We're not actually really doing two things at once. We're doing one thing poorly and pretending to do the other, right?
And yeah,
So
and I was thinking the other part of this too is curriculum sometimes is outdated before it gets into the hands of the teachers and the students because technology is changing so quickly.
don't get me started. You want to go down that rabbit hole? Because I will go down it, girl.
Let's go.
I mean, okay, so this is a double-edged sword. I understand why we need to have checks and balances in terms of building curriculum. I completely understand that. However, there are ways to be more efficient and moving curriculum along. And again, I'm a big believer in a framework. And I think
Mhm.
I've said this a lot, and I keep saying it. I love a good template. You
Yeah,
wanna say
give us the boundaries, like, give us something, like, tell us where our restrictions are and we can work within that, right?
like,
And
give big, like, what are the ideas? Like, what do we need to know? And
Mhm.
then every couple of years, you just sort of plug and play. Like, you can pull out this and put this in, right? Oh, is this still relevant? Great. You know, I think that's the part that I struggle with. Why do we don't have to what does it say? Throw the baby out
The
with the
baby out with the
bathwater? Like,
bathwater.
yeah, like, you don't have to throw everything away and rebuild. You still need to know we need to know force and motion. But I don't always wanna do a simple machine. I'd like to do other things.
I think this is a great segue to go into and talk about, the continuous improvement and just in time learning within a company and within corporations,
Mm.
right? And so there's two things that I see most common. Either you have nothing at all or you have something, but if one, it's hard to find. And if you can find it, it's way too much information for anyone to actually one fit into their day in between a meeting. It'll get interrupted 20 times. You don't actually finish it. And it's hard for people to even want to go in there and do it. How many reminders they have to get just to go check that box so that they meet the requirements of learning and so forth. Everybody's probably going, yep, been there, done that.
Uh-huh.
So
We've all done it.
but we need this continuous improvement. We need to be able to easily pass down information so that we can upskill new resources as fast as possible, especially today. So I know you have a lot of feelings around this.
I have a lot of feelings around this. So here's what I believe. It is very difficult for us as humans to process information in large batches, which is why sometimes social media overwhelms so many of us. Just in time learning. Here's how it needs to work. Again, here comes my framework. So when you're thinking about learning and kind of breaking things down, I always say start with one thing. What is the one thing that you could use to make your life a little better today? So that's the other thing. So when you're for companies that are looking to upskill their talent or to upskill their workforce, you have to start small and build. And anything you're learning needs about 5 to 7 minutes max. Learn the one thing and then practice it. And by the way, you need to practice it at least 7 to 14 times. By 21, you will have a habit. But if you only do it once or twice and then step away, you won't remember. You have to keep doing it. So that's why, like, when we get, inundated with all these things, like, no one's going to do it because we can't, we're simple. We want to, but the way knowledge happens is knowledge happens by building your skill set little by little by little by little. All of us are experts in our field, but that didn't happen overnight, right? It took time and failure, So the just in time piece, I'm always really advocating for people to think, yes, you probably do need some in-depth training. There's probably things you do need to like spend time in, but in general, if you're wanting to upskill people on technology skills, start small.
I like it. Well, Valerie, I think this might be a good time for us. Maybe this is a good time to ask her an audacious question.
Yes, let's do that. Okay,
Oh,
so I'll make it easy for you.
No.
What would you overhaul tomorrow if you had zero constraints?
What rule would you break, Sharon?
Oh my God.
That's holding us back right now. I mean, there's so many, but what is the first one that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, I would overhaul K-12 education in a second. I'd stop everything.
Pause. Like the government does it all the time, right?
So this is something I believe. I believe that that education is the great equalizer. I believe that knowledge is everything. And I believe that exposure and opportunity just brings humanity together. I think we're all so much more similar than we are different all the time. And we all have so many similar experiences. And I don't believe that there's a one size fits all for education. I believe there has to be nuance and flexibility, and we're not, for lack of a better word, we're not binary. We're not like a 0 or a 1, right? We are somewhere in the middle. And that's the beauty of being a human and learning. And I'm often saddened by the way our system has become and the complications we make from it, and thinking through, at the base, we need to be able to read, write, and arithmetic, right? We need to be able to do those things and have creativity. And I think that's the thing that keeps me up at night, is that I worry that we're not empowering our next generation to have that grit and creativity to really continue to innovate and change the way we do this thing called life.
I completely agree with you. I think there was a research study where they had a competition between kindergartners and very, very smart engineers. And they just gave them a set of random supplies and they asked them to try to build the tallest tower and to see who could do it, the engineers, which is what they do every day, or the kindergartners. And the kindergartners won. Yeah. Because they haven't had the creativity. Yep. And they just, they were just working and just went and they just did it. And there was way too much conversation. No one was working together. A lot of people getting in each other's way. And so the kindergartners actually won. And there's so much lost from that, or that we have at an early age to the end. And I just think that, to your point, it makes me sad too.
It does. That beauty, you see sort of that create that imagination gets sucked out.
Well, I mean, I don't want to end on a sad note, but it is a sad reality that we are currently in. And so I
However,
want to,
I still
yeah.
believe there's little things you can do. That's why I'm saying, like, you can do little snippets, you can do little wins to bring it back.
Yeah, I was just going to say, even as adults, I'm always, in my meditations and as I practice I'm always trying to experience more of a childlike mentality, because there's a lot of beauty there for all of us. And if we can eliminate those projections that we put onto children at such an early age, I know I experienced it in my childhood and my education, but if the less that we can force that imprintation onto their minds at an early age and let them just evolve, let them be, and peel back those, don't even add the layers, right? Just try to keep them in their innate selves, right? Throughout the education system. I think you're onto something. So it was nice to get some time in with you today.
Yes, so lovely. Thank you for having me. And if I can just say the one thing I would, because I don't want to leave on a sad note either, Valerie, but I would say the one thing that I think is so powerful for us, to what you just said, Mara, about imposing adult thoughts on kids. Remember to take what could be a negative and flip it to a positive. Like, instead of, people often say, I can't do math. Well, you can do math. What's the math you like?
Mhm.
And encouraging young people and those that are around us, instead of thinking of the negative, well, you know what? We're not all great at all things, but let's find what we are great at, and then how do we elevate that? That to me is how we begin to change our thoughts around education and our thoughts around, that trades are not the right fit, right? We have to rethink that, what that looks like. So that starts with all of us that are in the fields that we're in the positions that we're in, to say, you are great, and let's find what you're really great at, and let's help you get there. So thank you all for having me and letting me
Thank you so much for being
yap
on. Yes.
about all the things.
Yes. Thank you so much. And we thank the listeners for all listening
Yeah.
in today.
And check out the links. You'll find them wherever you're listening, how we can support the efforts of Dottie Rose and some of the organizations that Dr. Sharon's involved in as we move forward. So thank you.